Imagine waking up to the news that hundreds of your fellow Americans can't take to the skies because of a stubborn government shutdown. It's not just a headline, it's disrupting lives and plans nationwide. As the longest shutdown in U.S. history drags on, flight cancellations are spiking, hitting travelers from coast to coast. But here's where it gets controversial. Is this really the best way to handle the situation? Or are there hidden agendas at play that could be hurting everyday people more than helping? Let's dive into the details and see what this means for you and your travels, uncovering layers you might not have considered. First off, on Saturday, we witnessed another round of flight cancellations across the country. To give you a visual sense, think of circles marking the impacted airports, with their sizes reflecting the volume of canceled flights. The bigger the circle, the more disruptions. Lines on the map trace the routes that got scrapped. Keep in mind, this graphic focuses solely on domestic flights and airports. International ones aren't included here. Plus, cancellations count both departures and arrivals at these hubs. All this data comes courtesy of Cirium, compiled by the New York Times for clarity. Now, hundreds of domestic flights were axed on Saturday, marking the second day of these intentional reductions. And with even deeper cuts on the horizon, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and Transportation Department are stepping in with clear reasons. They're easing the load on air traffic controllers. Many of these professionals are dealing with unpaid time, leading some to call in sick or even take on side gigs to make ends meet during this extended federal freeze. This shutdown, as detailed in a related New York Times piece, is unprecedented in length and impact. For context, if you're new to this, think of air traffic controllers as the conductors of an enormous symphony. Without pay, the music starts to falter, and flights ground to a halt. The previous day, Friday, saw nearly 1,000 flights canceled, which sounds alarming, but actually represented less than 4% of all U.S. flights that day. Major airports stayed relatively calm, with passengers and staff adapting as best they could. Yet, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy's warning that these mandated cuts might intensify drove home the shutdown's ripple effects to a broader audience. It's a stark reminder that government decisions, even behind the scenes, can turn personal vacations or business trips into unexpected challenges. To manage this, U.S. officials pinpointed 40 airports for phased flight reductions, aiming to slash overall activity by 10% by week's end. This timing is particularly poignant, coming just weeks before the holiday travel rush kicks in. That festive period when families reunite and airports buzz with excitement. The affected airports span the spectrum, from bustling major hubs like Atlanta and New York to smaller spots like Indianapolis and Louisville. They cross political lines too, touching blue states and red states alike, proving that this issue doesn't discriminate. And this is the part most people miss. Comparing today's cancellations to last year's norms reveals just how abnormal the situation is. Let's break it down with a clear table showing the share of scheduled flights that got canceled recently versus the full month of November 2024. For beginners, percentages here indicate the portion of planned flights that didn't take off, a simple way to gauge disruption without getting lost in numbers. Here's the comparison at a glance. Share of scheduled flights canceled in recent days and throughout November 2024. Airport, November 7, November 8, November 2024. All caps acronym Branchlas 1 of 1,327 flights, 9.4%, 122 of 1,301 flights. Indianapolis, 5.7 of 297 flights, 5.7 of 14 of 244 flights. 5.4%, 11 of 203 flights. 5.2%, 8 of 155 flights. 0.4%. Washington Reagan, 17.4%. 151 of 869 flights. 5.1%. 32 of 625 flights. 0.2% Tampa, 3.4%. 17 of 493 flights. 5%. 21 of 416 flights. 0.2% Chicago Midway, 2.5%. 10 of 405 flights. 4.6%. 14 of 306 flights. 0.3% Cincinnati, 7.2%. 18 of 250 flights. 4.5%. 9 of 199 flights. 0.2% Newark, Paul, 4.5%. 35 of 784 flights. 3.8%. 26 of 682 flights. 0.1% Salt Lake City, 3.2%. 21 of 650 flights. 3.8%. 22 of 584 flights. 0.2% Chicago O'Hare, 3.5%. 82 of 2,313 flights. 3.7%. 76 of 2,052 flights. 0.3% Portland, 2.3%. 10 of 438 flights. 3.6%. 13 of 364 flights. 0.5% Boston, 4.8%. 46 of 960 flights. 3.5%. 26 of 750 flights. 0.1% San Diego, 3.5%. 22 of 627 flights. 3.5%. 17 of 479 flights. 0.4% Houston Hobby, 6%. 20 of 336 flights. 3.4%. 9 of 265 flights. 0.4% Baltimore Washington, 3.2%. 18 of 562 flights. 3.2%. 14 of 439 flights. The data for recent days comes from Cirium, November 2025, while last year's figures are from the Federal Aviation Administration, November 2024, all sourced through the New York Times. As we wrap this up, it's hard not to question the bigger picture. Are these shutdown-induced flight cuts a necessary safety measure, or a political maneuver that's unfairly burdening travelers and the economy? Some might argue it's prioritizing controller well-being, while others see it as a symptom of deeper dysfunction in governance. What do you think? Should the government have resolved this sooner to avoid such disruptions, or is there value in these tough decisions? Do you agree that the impacts are felt equally across states, or does it highlight regional divides? Share your views in the comments. We're eager to hear differing perspectives and spark a conversation.